On April 15, 1912, the RMS Titanic sank in the waters of the North Atlantic. Among its passengers was one Father Thomas Byles, who has long been an inspiration to me, an inspiration because of his dedication to priestly duty to the very end. Father Byles was born in England, the son of a Congregationalist minister. His own religious journey first took him into the Church of England, where he planned on becoming a minister. Meanwhile, his brother William had converted to Catholicism, which had an influence over Thomas, who also eventually entered the church. William entered a Jesuit novitiate, planning on becoming a Jesuit priest, and Thomas also desired to become a religious priest. In one of the letters I have, written by Father Byles, he writes in part to his brother Winter, not a Catholic, "I am staying on in Germany after taking departure of the others, in the hopes of getting a tutorship here for a few months. I have been staying here at a Benedictine convent for the last week and have had a very pleasant time. I think this is the finest country I have seen. This abbey has only been founded 30 years, but it has acquired a great reputation, especially for art, and it has already several branches in different lands, one in England. You probably know that Willie began his Jesuit novitiate last Saturday, September 8th. I hope to enter some religious order early in next year, but I want to wait a little, partly because I have not yet found out which order I am best suited for. I wish I could impart to you something of the bliss of knowing with certainty what God has revealed for our support and help. It is a happiness which grows more and more every day, and which affords a truly marvelous and altogether supernatural support in all temptation and against all evil. It is, however, beyond my power to impart this. The most I can do is pray to God to give to all I love this wonderfully great gift which I have received. And I trust you also pray continually that God will show you more of his truth. It is the duty of everyone who does not possess a complete revelation." William did not become a Jesuit. He moved to New York to run a rubber business, and there he met, fell in love, and became engaged to a young woman named Catherine. Thomas, meanwhile, did not become a religious priest, but a diocesan priest. And it was the upcoming wedding of William and Catherine that caused Thomas to be on the Titanic. They had asked him to officiate at their wedding, and he agreed. On Easter Monday, before he left, he was with his friend Monsignor Watson. They spoke of many things, one of which was the danger of icebergs in the North Atlantic that time of the year. Monsignor Watson also loaned him his Mass kit so that he could offer Mass while on board. And this he did. His very last Mass was on April 14, 1912. It was Low Sunday, the Sunday after Easter. He offered Mass both in the second and third class lounges, and there he preached, both in English and in French, on the need for men to have a life belt in the shape of prayer and the sacraments to save their souls when in danger of being lost in spiritual shipwreck in times of temptation. Just as men require a life belt to save themselves when their lives are in danger of being lost in an actual shipwreck. At 11:40 p.m. that evening, Father Byles was walking back and forth, dressed in his priestly garb on the boat deck, praying his breviary. At that time, he witnessed the Titanic strike the iceberg. He immediately knew of the danger and went down to the third class, where he began to bless and calm the people and hear their confessions. He then led them up to the boat deck to help them into the lifeboats, and at least twice, a crew member pleaded with Father Byles to get into a lifeboat to save his own life, but he refused. He said that as long as there was one soul left on board, he would remain. After all the lifeboats had left, he gathered around him over 100 people, and he began to lead them in the praying of the rosary, with the people responding. As the aft end of the ship began to rise higher and higher out of the water, he led them all in an act of contrition and gave them absolution. He then said to them, "You are all now prepared to meet God." What is the life of Father Byles say for us today, especially in this time of pandemic? I reflect that life itself is important, but not as important as our spiritual lives, not as important as remaining and dying in a state of sanctifying grace. And this brings in the importance of our personal encounter with Christ. Our personal encounter with Christ is through the sacraments. Since the ascension of Christ into heaven, his presence has passed into the sacraments. And so that is how we encounter Christ. And that is why we need priests. It is through the priests of the church that we have this encounter with Christ in the sacraments. But this must be a personal encounter. It cannot be done online. It cannot be done virtually. When one is baptized, they are baptized with water by the priest and the words, "I baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit." When one confesses their sins, it cannot be over a telephone. It is done before a priest who acts in persona Christi, in the person of Christ, in giving absolution. Yet it is Christ who baptizes. It is Christ who absolves. We must have this personal encounter when we attend Mass. That is why we cannot fulfill our Mass obligation virtually, online, by watching television, because we must be there in the presence of Christ as Calvary is made present again on our altar. As bread and wine are changed into the actual body and blood along with the soul and divinity of Christ. So one of the things we can do on this anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic and the death of Father Thomas Byles is pray for an increase in vocations and to encourage young men to become priests, because it is through priests that people have this encounter with Christ through the sacraments. This is how we encounter him today. It was Christ's will that we receive his grace in this manner. And so on this anniversary, I wish you all God's blessing. Pray for me, pray for my parish, and pray for priests.